This is truly an honor and a privilege, and I say that not lightly, to have an incredible conversation today with Jeffrey Steele. And your day off, by the way, and you're giving me some of your time, so I really do appreciate that, man. Thank
Oh
you.
man, it's my honor. I mean, what else would I do, right?
Right. uh, it's really funny because you and I have chatted previously, and I want to say it was probably like 15, 20 years ago,
Oh
not
my
quite
God.
20. Uh, you were actually in studio doing some production work for Chris and Preston of Low Cash, and they were doing an
Wow.
interview with me on the phone at the time. And this might have been theater of the mind to me, but I think Chris or Preston threw their phone over out the car to you, and we chatted for just like 2 minutes. I'm like, this is the craziest thing I think I've ever had happen in my life. It was so cool. So
Wow. And that
yeah,
man, that's going back too, because boy, when I first met those guys,
yeah,
2008, I think, maybe.
hmm, yeah.
Whew, long time. So
It's been
I
a
don't know
long
when I don't know
time.
what year it was, but that's when I
Yeah.
met him. So it's been a long time.
Yeah, man. Well, again, I just think about the career that you've had, and the people that you've influenced, much
Oh,
like them, the success that you've been able to have, obviously with your work with Boy Howdy, which just listening to that music, I mean, she'd give everything or anything is one of my favorite songs
is
from
it
'90s country.
really?
Absolutely, dude, it is one of the best.
Oh my
Um,
God.
so you got that, you've got your solo stuff, you've got your credentials as a judge on Nashville Star, and
Yeah,
I'm sure
yeah.
going through this list of things that you've done, you're like, all right, yeah, I know I've done all that, but do you ever sit back and be like, holy crap, I've actually really done so much that other people could only dream of this?
Sometimes I'll look up. I usually don't look up, but I'll look up and just say, "Holy smoke!" Like what's been going on for the last 45 years. You know what I mean? Because it
Yeah.
flies by so fast too. But I think part of it is just I've had my head down, the old nose to the grindstone thing. I just love it so much.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since I was a little kid, it's never changed. Just hearing the sounds in one ear and the other, like in the headphones, you hear. I've just been attracted to the music, the song, the lyric ever since I can remember, since I was 4 years old and heard my first Elvis record. Like I was a little kid, and it's just gone from there, and I've just never got tired of it. So when I think back, like I'm hanging out in a room with Miley Cyrus or ZZ Top, or on the road with Leonard Skinner, or judging Nashville Star. It's the craziest career too, because I've always been. I mean, I was out there in the limelight for a long time, but for a lot of years, I've been behind the scenes doing everybody else's stuff, everybody else's career, and bringing my gift, my talent to it, whatever you want to call it, and trying to help them reach their dream. And it's put me in the craziest situations. Just on a random note, I this past July 4th, I was in Turkmenistan, which is next to Afghanistan,
Yeah.
playing for the U.S. Embassy and the troops and the people of the country there on a cultural ambassador tour.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
you know what I mean? And then I come back home and I'm playing at a club in Nashville.
Right. Yeah.
That's
Kind
how
of.
it goes with me.
Yeah. Kind of at different extremes for
Yeah,
sure.
and I love
Yeah.
it. I love that. I love that. I never know what it's going to be. I never know what it's going to be. And I
Yeah.
love that.
That's so cool. Now, you mentioned obviously working on other people's careers. You think about the songs that you've had, with Montgomery Gentry, all of the hits for Rascal Flats, stuff for Tim McGraw, the Eric Church. Is there an artist that you're just extra proud, like, wow, I really helped make them into who they are today?
Well, I mean, the obvious one would be Flats and Montgomery Gentry, because they both came out at a time. I think like in the very late '90s. I was just starting to figure out what I knew how to do as a writer and a creator of
Hmm.
music, and you know what I mean. I was finding my song, so to speak,
Yeah.
and I've always been a real diverse musician. I listen to all kinds of stuff. So I was writing these songs that were like pop. I don't even know if we were trying to even aim at country, but I was in London writing these songs with this producer, and we couldn't get them cut. And every time I'd play them in Nashville, they'd say they were too pop. And then I was writing these Southern rock songs. And every time I'd play them in Nashville, they'd say, man, this is just not what's happening out there. And one of my lowest, I don't call it lowest because it's just a journey you're on, but that moment when everybody's criticizing you and nobody's, oh, that's the bass player from Boy Howdy. He's trying to be a songwriter now. That you go through that with the industry because they don't know what you're doing and they don't really know you. At that lowest point, Montgomery Gentry, I meet them. Here's this guy from California and meets these two hillbillies from Kentucky. And then I meet the Flats guys around the same era. And the Flats guys are looking for something that's a little more pop, and Montgomery Gentry is looking for something that's a little more Southern rock. Mm-hmm. And by that time, I had amassed warehouses full of these songs that everybody criticized me for. And they just said they're never going to be on the radio. This is not what the market is.
Yeah.
But nobody foresaw what was going to be happening. No one can. You know what I mean? And I got one of them cut, and then I got another one cut. And I quickly went from, idiot to genius. You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden everybody's going, oh, we love these songs. They hated them a year ago, but now they loved them. But I credit it to Eddie and Troy and to the Flats guys, and mainly Dan Huff, who was producing Flats. He kind of saw something in the songs. And I got an early kick with Trace Adkins too. When Trace was getting going and they were trying to figure him out and how to make him into a star. And I was writing all these crazy songs and everybody was looking for something different at that time. And the roads lined up for me. So yeah, I'm way off your question, but that's kind of my journey, So
it's interesting though, because you said like, there's so many people that kind of told you no, and then all of a sudden you have these songs, Flats, for example, that had a monster hit. I think it was What Hurts the Most, and then you had
These Days was the first one.
Yeah, but that particular song though, you had, what was it, Mark Wills, Faith Hill that cut it. You had Your Tears Are Coming.
Almost got it. Yeah.
Your Tears Are Coming. Caitlin and Will. That was, who else was on that? Montgomery Gentry, obviously. Low Cash played that. You had released a version.
I also had that song "Gone" was recorded by James Otto back in the day.
Oh yeah.
When James had his first record deal, and then Montgomery Gentry heard it and went, "Oh my God, we got to cut this." And,
so it's kind of satisfying a little bit, right?
Well, I mean, it's what I tell all these young songwriters now is like, because I publish them now, and I'm kind of like the publisher guy that's developing all these songwriters as well as doing my own. And I tell these guys, like all of those guys that worked at the record company back then, they don't work at the record company anymore.
No.
And I'm still here. I'm not bragging about that, but I'm just saying. But what I always did was I always wrote my song from the heart, and I wrote my story. And I never tried to write anybody else's story but my own. And it was a longer road. But when I finally started to get some success, it was more of a, like there was a credibility factor to it, I guess, and more than just having a hit song. And so I try to tell these writers, write what you know, and don't stray, and don't fall into that gap of everybody telling you what to do, because everybody was telling me what to do. And I just kind of put up my middle finger and said, you know what, I'm just going to do what I love. I have a lot of influences. Unfortunately, as much as I love Merle Haggard, I'm never going to be as traditional as Merle Haggard. So I got to figure out my own, you know what I mean? Like, and I embraced it. And once I embraced it, the world started turning around for me. And there was, there's a lot of in between tragedy and triumph and failure in that story. But that's why we go out and do these shows, so we can tell these stories. And it blows people's minds.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about a story, because obviously, again, so many songs to choose from. What song do you feel like has the most interesting story to it, or that was kind of so far out of left field that somehow managed to make it into your notebook?
Okay. There's so many. And anybody knows that's seen me before, I can sit up there for 4 hours and play songs and tell. The stories are sometimes better than the songs. I don't know. People come, they go, man, I can't believe, but just a random story. I got called to play this show at the Opry, the Opry Hotel in Nashville, the big ballroom.
Hmm.
It was going to be the debut of all the new Harley Davidson motorcycles. And they called me up and they wanted me to come and just play my electric guitar for 30 seconds like Jimi Hendrix while they showed a video and started up all the new motorcycles. That was my gig. And they offered me $10,000 to do it. I said, "Are you kidding me? I'll be." The
Yep.
only catch was it was at 8:30 in the morning. For a musician, that's like 8:30. I didn't even know there were two 8:30s. Like you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
and so and so the night before, I knew I had to get to bed early. So the night before, I was watching CMT, and Hank Williams Jr. was doing a special, and he had all these artists singing songs with him. And while he was singing with Gretchen Wilson, he was singing a song called Outlaw Women. And while he was singing, he said to Gretchen, he goes, "Gretchen, me and my gang love outlaw women." And I was like, "What did he just say?" And I rewound the TV, "Me and my gang." I was like, "Wow, that's cool." And I wrote it down in my phone, right? So the next morning I get up and I do the gig for Harley Davidson, and I see the logo all over the ballroom. Live to ride, ride to live to ride to live. So I wrote it down because that's what I always do, right?
Hmm.
And so I played this gig, I played my guitar. They started up the motorcycles. I got this check for $10,000. And I went to my studio to meet with Tony Mullins, who I was writing with that day. And Tony sits down and goes, "Jeff, listen to this guitar riff. Bah, 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 bah." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I got this great title, Me and My Gang." And I started spitting out these lyrics. And by 10:30, we had written the song called Me and My Gang. And I know I'm making the story long, but
No.
um, so I was producing the new album on Montgomery Gentry at that time. And so I'm like, "Oh my God, I've got a number one song for Montgomery Gentry. This is so good. It's so perfect for them." And my publisher, the guy I'm working with, hears the song and he plays it for Dan Huff, who's producing Rascal Flatts.
Hmm.
So Dan calls me up and he says, "Hey, I just heard this song called Me and My Gang. You got to let me have it for Rascal Flatts." And I'm like, "They can never sing this song. This is so Montgomery Gentry." He goes, "You got to give me this song. We got to toughen these guys up. They need a song that has more edge." And so Dan had always been this guy that had recorded my songs back in the day when nobody else would listen to them.
Hmm.
So I felt the honor system there, and I go, "Man, just take it and do it." And he recorded it on Rascal Flatts.
Yeah. And that $10,000 check grew to be much bigger than that.
Yeah, but it's in the moment, and then the best part of that story is, um, I gave away a number one song that I needed for the Montgomery Gentry record because I was producing it.
Yeah.
What an idiot! What an idiot, right? So I called the label and I said to the label people, I said, "Hey, what are the guys? What are we really trying to find for these guys for this new album?" Because I just written My Town, and it's a big hit for them, and Hell Yeah, and all that stuff. And the lady, the A&R girl says, "Well, we need My Town Part 2." And I'm like, "Oh, please, that's like Jaws 2,
Right.
it's gonna be the worst thing ever." And I said to her, "I want to write something I can be proud of." And I caught myself saying that. And I was like, "Oh my God, something to be proud of." And I hung up on her and I called my buddy Chris Wall. I'm like, "Chris, I think I got something. Meet me in my studio, blah, blah, blah." And we wrote something to be proud of.
Wow.
So you start to find that you're always dancing on in the music business. You're always dancing on eggshells. You're just trying to keep your plate spinning. You don't know what you're doing, but you know everything at the same time. And I have tripped and stumbled into more things just by just I just keep moving.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just keep moving. And I thought I gave away number one song, but then I wrote a number one song. And it ended up being the biggest song that Montgomery Gentry ever had. And so those are the stories we tell on the show. And it's I mean, it's just so
Mhm.
fun. And,
That's
and
my
there's a
favorite
million
part.
of those. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a million of them. And some of them are so crazy you can't believe it.
Yeah, and that's again what makes country music so special. I mean, compared to so many other different formats of music, yeah, there's beats, there's all this stuff, but man, the stories behind the songs, it
Yeah.
makes it so so special. So,
And then a lot of times just how you get the song to the artist is a journey in itself.
e-
Like you talk
absolutely,
about what hurts the most. It went through so many people before Rascal Flatts finally
hmm
found it 8 years after I wrote it.
yeah. Is there,
You know what I mean?
which is crazy, right? I mean, it's been
Yeah.
sitting there on a shelf and now it's such a massive song.
And then I wrote, and I don't want to wear you out with all this,
Oh no, this is great.
but like 2015, one of my writers that I was publishing, a young kid, I was bringing him up and mentoring him and all that, and he came in one day and this is 2015, and he threw all of his gear down on the floor, and he was just fed up with Nashville. Same tempo, same song, everybody's writing the same lyric. He was really bummed out, and I was trying to assure him that man, it gets better. You just gotta roll with it, and don't worry about it. Your moment's gonna come, and you got to be ready for it. So you just keep writing everything. And so he goes, no, man, I'm sick of it. I'm done with it. Somebody needs to write something with some meat on it, and they need to stick that in a country song. And I looked at him, I go, what'd you say? He goes, somebody needs to stick that in a country song. And I was like, we're gonna do it right now.
Yeah.
And so
I yeah.
so we wrote that in 2015, and I played it for everybody in Nashville, and they looked at me like I had three heads.
Mhm.
And they'd done that to me before, and I knew I had something. I
Mhm.
just had to wait until the moment came. And of course, 5 years later, 2020, the whole world's on fire and everybody's freaking out, and the world's falling apart. And Eric hears my song,
Mhm.
and Eric calls me up and says, "Oh my God, Jeff, I just heard this. Stick that in your country song. It's gonna be my first single."
Yeah.
So
And that song, dude, that song, it's such an extreme in comparison to other songs like My Wish and these other
yeah,
songs
yeah,
that you've written. And that's what I love about your songwriting in particular is there's not one set route that you go, man. It seems like you'll
no.
write anything and everything, but that also leads me to ask you then, is there a certain topic or something that you're like, man, I don't either know enough about that to be able to write it with credibility, or I don't even want to touch that, or are you just open to anything?
I will only write from my heart. So I'm not gonna assume that makes me a genius on anything, but it makes me more honest, I think. Even if my take might be the wrong take, I'm trying to look at my perspective and the listener's perspective. Or like if I see something out in the world and there's a certain person I see, and I'm trying to think of what he's thinking or she's thinking in her head. And of course, I don't know. I can only assume that, but you get that visual perspective of what somebody looks like when they're thinking. And so I just try to do that. I wrote that song a couple of years ago with Aaron Lewis, Am I the Only One? And
Yeah,
I got bashed by the industry, but
yeah,
I am a proud American citizen, and I felt those things, and I
mhm,
was seeing those things happening in the world, and I wasn't writing what I saw. And so I got a lot of flack for it, and then I got a lot of praise for it. And
mhm.
and but we're living in weird times right now, and
We really are.
so I'm never afraid of it, but I always try to make sure that it's from my heart. And I know if I do that, I'm coming from an honest place, even if I'm not a genius on the topic I'm talking about. I'm just coming from, man, this is how I feel. This is how it makes me feel.
Mhm,
And it's emotion, and it's your thoughts too, but it's so much emotion when you're writing songs, and you're trying to paint an honest picture. And here's what I always tell people too is like, a lot of us have this gift, and we get really good at the technique,
mhm.
the method of it. We all know how to do it. We all know how to grab the right words at the right
Mhm.
time.
Chase the hit,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we all know how to formulate a thing that people might sing along to. And it happens every day in Nashville. And some of those songs are formulated completely. But every now and then you get that divine inspiration from God. And that's what I tell all these writers. That's what the tools are for. You learn how to do it's automatic to you, so that when the real idea comes, you know exactly how to park the car. And you know what I mean? And you know
Mhm.
exactly where the song needs to go. And that's what happened to me with songs like My Wish. Like it just fell out of the sky.
Yeah.
And it was writing itself. It's that, you hear writers say that sometimes. It doesn't happen often, but that's why you write 10 million songs. So when it does happen, you know how to chase it, and you don't get stuck in a corner. You don't paint yourself into a corner.
For sure.
Um, so I talk about that too, and when I do my show, I mean, I love telling the stories, and I
Yeah.
love inspiring people. to go for what they love in life, whether they write songs or whatever they do.
Yeah, and I love that, and I think that's such a cool dynamic that you have with what you do. But I've got to ask, you're doing this tour with Anthony Smith,
Yeah.
and what brought that together? That is that something that you've had this relationship for such a long time. You're like, this guy is, the guy I want to do this with. How'd that come about?
Yeah, me and Anthony are old pals. We came into town around the same time, and everybody was rejecting us because we were a little bit different. We were a little bit more rocking, and but we were country guys. We loved, we just had a different take, and so we had to crawl through the mud together. And when Anthony got his record deal, I wrote that song with him. If that ain't country, I don't know what is. And then we wrote Chrome, and we wrote I'm Trying for Trace Atkins. So we have kind of a history of bringing in songs that were at the time not very mainstream. At that time at country radio, they were not very mainstream ideas and songs. And so we kind of have that brotherhood of that, I think. So we just been hooking up recently. We just got a song cut by Tim McGraw that we wrote, and um, I love writing with him. We just, the years kind of pulled us apart, and we all go through what we go through. And so now we're back together, and when we do this show together, and it's so cool because it's nostalgic, and on one hand, it's funny on the other hand, it's really good playing on the other hand, and it's some pretty damn good songs that have held up pretty good. And it's just a really cool night because Anthony and I think are cut from the same cloth, even though we're from different parts of the country. We are cut from exactly the same cloth musically, and the crowd usually eats it up. And we've been doing more and more of these now, and just having the best time. And like these are the guys you come up with, and you see what's happening now, and everybody has their moment, and it's all of that. It's all of that in a ball, and we're just kind of celebrating. Um, I think how grateful we are to still be doing it, after 40 freaking years, like it's amazing.
Yeah, the fact that you still are like, yeah, it's just my day off after all the success and everything that you've done, that you're still so active in music and everything that that's awesome, dude. That is so
Yeah.
cool.
And then when I see these kids, like, I work with all these younger kids now, and when I see that, and um, it just lights me up. It lights me up when I can help them and say, hey man, try to shortcut them a little bit, and know that they're trying to speak from their heart, and they're getting pulled on in every direction from the music business. So I try to be the guy that's going, hey man, trust me, it's a longer, crappier, harder road. To stick to your guns, but do it.
Hmm.
But do it because it will
Yeah.
pay off. It will turn into something amazing. But you just have to have the patience to not fall into the void of doing what everybody else does. It's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard, especially in the music business. It's hard not to jump on the trend and stick to who you really are. So that's kind of where I am now.
Yeah.
And as an older guy, I get together with a younger guy like Jaron Johnston, who I've known forever. And Tom Douglas. Me and Tom are like senior citizens now. When it comes to songwriting. But we get in the room with Jaron, and we're just trying to steer Jaron's idea. You know what I mean? Like, and we
Yeah.
write a song called "Raise 'Em Up," which turns into this amazing song. And then a week later, we wrote "Meanwhile Back in Mama's" for Tim and Faith.
Wow.
Um, but basically, Tom and I were just trying to help Jaron figure out what he was doing. As we get older, we start to figure out what our role is when we're in that room with all these young kids, because now it's their dream. Now it's their,
Yeah.
I mean, so you know, so I embrace that, and I think that's why I'm having so much fun still. I'm 62 years old now, and I'm still playing 150 shows a year, and writing 150 songs still. I'm
Yeah.
still writing a ton of songs. I have a new single out with Stephen Wilson Jr. that I wrote, and I wrote a bunch of songs on that album, and I've got Annie Bosco coming up, new artist coming out, and Aaron Lewis. I got about 4 songs on his record, and so I'm just
You're going at it, man.
it's so
I
fun.
love it.
It's so
Uh,
fun.
Well, obviously, this Saturday, in my opinion, can't come soon enough. It's going to be a fantastic show. And Brown County Playhouse is going to be rocking in not Nashville, Tennessee, but Nashville, Indiana. So
Yeah.
don't drive too far away to go to that show, and make sure that you go there because you're not going to want to miss this. And Jeffrey, one last thing I want to bring up.
Yes,
Because
sir.
as soon as I told people, like our morning show, Jim, Deb, and Kevin, and Steve Stewart, that I was going to have this conversation with you, the first thing that they brought up was Country Music Expo. Back, I think you know where I'm going to go with this one, but when you basically saved the show because one of the artists was not going to be performing
Yeah,
because of a tiff between the guitar player, but you said, "I'll do it. I got this."
I'll do it.
So
Yeah, and
you remember that?
that was JD, right?
Is JD?
JD
Yeah.
JD Kennedy, yeah,
Yep.
and yeah, I never forget that kind of stuff. And I had a really amazing just a conversation with just a random person in the audience. It's so random, but they told me this tragic story, and uh, like they had come to see me because the song had healed one of those. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it honest to God, it set a course for me um, as I continued down the road with my career. It reminded me how important this gig was, and how important it is to get it right.
Hmm.
And now, after all these years, and it's so funny that we bring up the expo. I'll never forget meeting this lady. She had lost her kids in some kind of a fire. It was the craziest story, and it's part of my show now. I lost my son
Hmm.
a few years back,
Yeah.
and it became part of my show where I bring in what hurts the most and talk about losing somebody.
Hmm.
And it's turned into this whole thing now where people come up to me after the show and they share their experiences and we hug and they get involved. I have this charity that I'm a part of that they get involved with, and where people can help each other, and it's just the coolest thing. And I think at the end of the day, that's all it is, man. We're all struggling at something, and we gotta try to make it good for other people, And so that's what that moment taught me all those years ago about just how important it's really not that important, but it's really important, you know,
Exactly. Exactly.
in the scheme of things. And
Yeah.
what's really important is paying attention to other people's feelings when especially when you're in my position and you're on a stage and they're coming up to talk to you and thank you for something you did. It's so important to acknowledge that and
Mhm.
pay tribute to them. And so that was a gig where that was something that really changed the way I looked at being on stage.
Mhm.
And God, how long ago was it? 25 years ago?
Oh yeah, probably.
Longer?
Yeah. Yeah. Right around. I would say 25 to 30 for sure. Yeah.
Late 90s, maybe?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what it was. They didn't give me an exact date, but if JD was still here and was doing that, that sounds about right.
God, I love JD. He was so gracious to when I was with the Boy Howdy band. We were
Mhm.
trying so hard to get a single added, man, and
Yeah, they're great
he was
people.
such a
A
help
lot of
to
history.
us. I never forget
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
absolutely. And I haven't been to Nashville, Indiana since the Little Nashville, right?
yes. Yeah.
What was it called? No,
Exactly.
what was the?
Now it's the
And didn't it burn down?
Yeah. Yeah. So they did
Oh yeah,
the
yeah,
little opera
yeah.
now. Yeah.
I haven't been there since that, and so
Wow.
early '90s. So
Okay.
it'll be a joy to come up there and hang out.
I don't know if the leaves are changing colors yet, but you're right at the cusp at it. You might be at the perfect time. So
Oh, that's right. It's the end of September. That's right.
yeah, man. Well,
Well,
awesome.
we're looking forward to it, and me and Anthony, like I said, it's a fun show. It's a lot of laughs, and it's some good picking, and there's some
Yeah.
pretty good songs there. It's pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
I love just being up there with them. It's just fun,
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm so excited for it, man. And again, like I said,
me
a
too.
huge fan, and just grateful for
Thank
the
you.
opportunity to have this conversation with you. You've been very gracious with your time, and I don't want to take away
Absolutely,
any more time from your day off. Okay.
my honor, man. Thank you.
Awesome, buddy. We'll see you on Saturday. All
All
right.
right, we'll see you.
All right. See you, buddy.
Okay.